What are we thinking here as one insider drops a ridiculous Vikings trade report that has fans everywhere baffled beyond belief, even more than Aaron Rodgers, and a former Vikings fan favorite has hung up the cleats for good? We're going to be breaking down all of that in this episode of Vikings Digest, but first make sure to hit that subscribe button and click the bell icon so you don't miss any and all Vikings updates as we get closer and closer to the NFL draft and we get closer to our goal of 2,000 subscribers. So if you guys want to join in, make sure to hit that sub button and the bell icon so you don't miss any of the new episodes. And with that, let's hop into the first topic of the day, which is baffling QB2 candidate. So right off the bat here, the Tennessee Titans are about to select Cam Ward with the first overall pick in the 2025 NFL Draft, transitioning past the Will Levis experiment into a new era. Levis remains on the team heading into the third year of his 4-year rookie contract, and the talk from Titans brass publicly has been that they intend to keep him around, which nobody's believing for a second. So the question is, when will he be moved? Right before the season, over the summer, shortly after Cam is brought in after the draft? Not ruling anything out, but the timeline it seems to be on draft night as a strong possibility. Not only could it prove to be the perfect time to maximize the return for the Titans, but it could also create an immediate impact in their own draft. And this is, of course, coming from Easton Freeze at A to Z Sports, and he's including the Vikings as a strong candidate in this tier because while I think the trade will be pursued by the Titans before we get past the draft weekend, I'm certainly not ruling out a trade finally coming together later in the summer. There's still a world in which Levis finally moves on as late as the preseason, and while Minnesota's draft situation really prohibits them from making a trade with the 2025 capital, I think they'd become the team to focus on if Levis is still on the roster in May. Everything about this landing spot makes sense besides the 2025 available picks. The coach, the scheme, the quarterback culture, their desire for more than what they are currently have on the roster. It's a very good fit. And this is how we've seen former first-round Kenny Pickett traded twice for some surprising returns. The Steelers moved him in March 2024 for a fourth and third round pick swap with a pair of seventh round picks sent their way by Philly as well. And a year later, March 2025, the Eagles traded Pickett to the Browns for a fifth plus quarterback Dorian Thompson-Robinson. You can read all about these in the other stuff on A to Z Sports. But the big thing here is Will Levis as a Minnesota Viking. Honestly, I'm laughing because I can't take it seriously. When you have the other options out there, you still have Carly Wentz out there. You still got Drew Lock, which even those guys, much as I hate Carson Wentz, he still is better than what Will Levis would be. Yes, Will Levis is a lot younger. And yeah, he could have been a victim of circumstance, much like Ryan Tannehill, much like Geno Smith, much like Sam Darnold to an extent. So yes, as far as quarterback culture goes, if there's any team to pull out a great performance out of a quarterback or to pull the best out of a quarterback, Minnesota is that place. You have a quarterback guru in Kevin O'Connell there, amazing offensive weapons, a really solid offensive line. So yes, as a quarterback, anybody would want to go to Minnesota, whether it's as a backup or a starter, especially with the unfortunate history of starting quarterback injuries with Kirk Cousins, Teddy Bridgewater, all the other guys, JJ McCarthy even last season. So yes, there is a chance there where backup quarterback could be going there thinking, I might not play, but you do have, for unfortunate circumstances and because the Vikings are cursed, you still somehow have a chance to play. We saw 2 seasons ago where Nick Mullins, Josh Dobbs, Jaron Hall all got starts, which is insane to think of with this Minnesota Vikings team, where those guys probably didn't even expect to play a single game all season. So yes, Minnesota, they could be a little bit scared of what could happen because of our history and because of our just unfortunate bad luck. But Will Levis is not that answer. He is not going to be that backup to bring in. If you're willing to pay Will Levis like that, you go out and get Drew Lock for that, because we've at least seen that Drew Lock can pull in great performances. I'm not saying Drew Lock is a great quarterback by any means. However, last season, he earned himself some pretty hefty price tags with the way that he was playing with the Giants team. If you put him on a team like Minnesota with those weapons, what he was doing with Malik Neighbors and Tyrone Tracy and Sterling, some other guys there as well, you would be able to pull out a really nice season. Darius Slayton was that one that I was thinking of, not Sterling Shepard. But with that, Drew Lock would be a lot better in Minnesota as a backup than a guy like Will Levis. Now, on the Will Levis side of things, yes, like I previously mentioned, we've seen in the past where quarterbacks like Ryan Tannehill, Sam Darnold, Geno Smith, and among others have just come into horrible teams and situations. Zach Wilson being another one. I know Zach Wilson isn't the greatest of quarterbacks, but it's just a comparison. And a lot of it, unfortunately, is a lot of New York teams. But with Will Levis, he was coming into a terrible Titans team, which, yes, they went out and they put pieces around him, which was very shocking to see why they sucked as bad as they did this past season. Yes, injuries were a part of that, and as much as inconsistencies too, because early on in the season, Will Levis wasn't injured. He was just playing terrible football. So as that season went on, that's when the injuries started piling up, along with his terrible quarterback play. But with the weapons in DeAndre Hopkins to start the season, Tyler Boyd, as well as Calvin Ridley, and then you have Tony Pollard there, who is a really solid running back. Yeah, they didn't have an offensive line for anything really, and their defense wasn't the greatest. They still had a lot of holes that they had on defense, but within that, it's not like Will Levis was given nothing to work with. He still had elite talent at wide receiver that he could not get the ball to. He still had a really solid running back that did not help him out. Yes, he had a terrible Swiss cheese offensive line, which didn't do him any favors as well, but when you were looking at some of the plays he was making last season, look at the Kenny Pickett blooper that he had at the end of last season when he played in that final game. You see those kind of bloopers, that teams look at that and they say absolutely not. Kenny Pickett, the Browns took a chance on him, but let a team like the Browns take a chance on a quarterback like that. Minnesota cannot afford to roll the dice on a quarterback like Will Levis just because of the inconsistencies. There is injury history as well, and there is the matter of the fact that dude was just a bust. Unfortunately, that's the way it is. That's the verdict that he has labeled on him right now, much like Sam Darnold had before his resurgence last season, much like Geno Smith had until he went to Seattle. So yes, it could take a change of scenery. However, Will Levis is still really young. He still has a lot of growing to do. However, he is probably going to be in an unfortunate backup situation for the next 5 years probably, but we shall see how things kind of progress with that. But what do you guys think about all of this down in the comments below? I know Will Levis being brought into Minnesota, initially, a lot of people are just going to be like me, where it's just like, absolutely not. Don't even consider this. Give us Aaron Rodgers at that point as a backup. But on the other side of things, I can see someone playing devil's advocate as to why Will Levis could be a serviceable backup. However, if there's anybody to do it, it's Kevin O'Connell. But with Will Levis, I think we've seen all that we can see. If I'm wrong on that and he comes in and he's a great backup quarterback, cool. I'll be wrong on it. But right now, I have no problem standing on business saying that Will Levis is a bust, and I know I'm not the only one who would think that. But let us know what you guys have to say down in the comments below about the idea of Will Levis potentially being a backup quarterback to JJ McCarthy, or crazier things have happened. Maybe he's just in the race as a quarterback one with JJ McCarthy. Who knows at this point? But what do you guys have to say down in the comments? Let us know. But that's going to take us into our second topic of the day, which is Pat P has hung it up. So we see here in a tweet from Adam Schefter that 8-time Pro Bowl selection Patrick Peterson will be in Arizona on Monday to retire as a Cardinal per source. Peterson played 13 years in the NFL, including his first 10 seasons in Arizona, where he was a 3-time All-Pro selection, and all 8 of those Pro Bowls coming with the Arizona Cardinals. But not to forget, after those 10 seasons with Arizona, he came to Minnesota He came to Minnesota in 2021 before Mike Zimmer and Rick Spielman were fired, that the Vikings signed veteran defensive back Patrick Peterson, spent a decade of his NFL career racking up pros with the Cardinals, like we just said. And then in those 2 seasons in purple, getting 111 tackles, 6 interceptions, 20 passes defended in 30 games. He was one of the many veteran defensive backs who helped bridge the gap from Zimmer to Donatel, but left Minnesota the same offseason Brian Flores was hired as defensive coordinator. Now, I know Kirk is going to be with me here saying that he was a massive Patrick Peterson fan when he was playing with the Vikings. I obviously loved him. His age was starting to wear on him a little bit before they moved on and sent him to Pittsburgh and let him walk in free agency. However, he was still a lot of elite talent and veteran presence that we needed in that locker room. We had a really bad secondary before he got there. And yes, did it get infinitely better when he got there? Not necessarily, but he still was a really big beef up to have more of a veteran presence with Harrison Smith after Andrew Sendejo was gone, after we didn't really have many veteran presence in that secondary locker room. We finally had that with him. Yes, we did have to move on from it, but he still was good with a team that was still kind of not entirely rebuilding after Mike Zimmer, because we brought in Kevin O'Connell right away. However, within that, we still had our fair share of defensive struggles. You look at the playoff game that we had against the Giants, where it did not go our way. There was a lot of things that didn't go our way in that game, but there's a lot of things that Pat P brought to Minnesota that fans really loved. And yes, he was a Cardinals legend. He'll retire as a Cardinal tomorrow on Monday. However, through that time, he was still able to be a Minnesota Vikings fan favorite, and a lot of Vikings fans still remember their time with Patrick Peterson fondly. And according to Pro Football Reference, Patrick Peterson has a Hall of Fame monitor of 86.1. The average score for a defensive back is 96.93. Nonetheless, Peterson has the highest Hall of Fame monitor score of any defensive back not currently in the Hall of Fame. And everyone around him, including Leroy Butler, Steve Atwater, Cliff Harris, and Anus Williams, are already Hall of Famers. Assuming Peterson does not come out of retirement, he will be eligible for the Hall of Fame in 2028, where he'll likely be a cinched first ballot vote. I think Patrick Peterson, if looking at that company that he's in, definitely worthy of a first ballot nomination. Does he get it? I'm not too sure. There's a lot of guys that still are due on their second and third ballot that should get in there. However, Patrick Peterson had a phenomenal NFL career. Nothing but the best for you in retirement, good sir. Love the 2 seasons you brought to Minnesota, giving us a little bit more to cheer for after we didn't have the greatest of secondaries or the greatest of seasons. Gave us a little bit more to be happy about, especially when you were getting interceptions or breaking up passes. That wasn't Harrison Smith, so that brought us a lot of joy as Vikings fans. And I know I can speak for Kirk by saying that you were one of our favorite Vikings of the 2010s and the 2020s. It's definitely one of the better defensive backs we've had come through our building in the past 10 years. So it was great that we were able to have the bit of the twilight of your career as you've transitioned into the last 3 years and went off to Pittsburgh into retirement. However, yeah, people will say we got him past his prime. Sure, maybe he wasn't in the best prime of his career when we got him, but he still had a lot of elite talent, and we were able to do that, and that led to Byron Murphy and other great things. So yeah, if we didn't get Pat Pete, who knows, maybe we don't get Byron Murphy, and that would be a lot different story of where we are now. But that's the beauty of the NFL. All the ifs, ands, or buts, and all the domino effects that could have happened or didn't happen. That's some of the beauty of the NFL, and that's why we talk about sports as much as we do, and especially the NFL. But what do you guys think about Patrick Peterson and his Vikings tenure over those 2 seasons and his retirement? Do you think he's a first ballot Hall of Famer, or do you think he'll have to wait around for his second ballot in 2029? Let us know what you guys have to say down in the comments below. Let us know what you guys think about the Vikings offseason in general. As we get closer into the draft, we're going to be dropping some videos on potential draft trades that the Vikings could be looking at and where they could be changing up their position. We know Kwesi likes to make a lot of moves at the draft, so stay tuned for that and let us know what you guys think the Vikings will or should do at the draft, whether it's going out and drafting a guy, keeping their same spot, or moving around some spots to try and acquire some more picks. Let us know what you guys have to say down in the comments below. But that's going to do it for this episode of Vikings Digest. I've been your host, Griffen. Take care.